Welcome to episode 2 of the Overwatch League News Recap, and for this video we're going to be taking a look at the most recent article made by the Overwatch League going over the contract status of every single player on every single team currently. I'm sure some of you are going to want to take a look at this list for yourself, so I will be sure to leave a link in the description if you have not checked it out already. This list gives us a big time hint as to who could be staying, who could be leaving, and we do already know some people who are confirmed to leave, but some others we're not too sure about yet. They could be signed, they could end up leaving. There's also some other news that I did not talk about in the previous news recap and some new things that just recently happened that we will talk about as well. But first things first, we got to get through the meat of this video, and that is the contract status. Before diving into this list though, there's a couple of different things I wanted to try and explain to you guys so we can avoid as much confusion as humanly possible down in the comment section. So for one, each player on this list is going to fall under one of 5 statuses. There's the obvious ones, which are simply that they're under contract still and they're going to be with the team for 2021, or the remaining years on their contract has expired so they are a free agent because of it. There's also the fact that some players are going to have team options, meaning that the team can decide to either exercise that option and have them on the team for 2021 or decline that option and have them potentially explore free agency instead. And of course, the other thing is simply that the team and the player have mutually parted ways and they decided to get rid of their contract altogether. Simple enough, right? But another thing to note, and this is very, very important, is that all players on here that are free agents could still technically re-sign with their team, but they are able to discuss other offers with all teams in the league. So don't panic if you see your favorite player on your favorite team listed as a free agent. Unless it was officially announced they are not returning to the team, there still technically is a chance they can come back, so don't give up hope. Alrighty, now that I've explained that, let's get down to business. I'm going to try and utilize that new YouTube section thing where you can kind of see when certain parts of the video begin and end. So if you want to go to a certain part of the video to look at a specific team, then be my guest, go right ahead and do so. So let's go in alphabetical order, which means the Atlanta Reign are up first. I'm going to try and not spend too much time on any specific team just because of the fact that there are some things we already know, so I'm going to skip over certain things and just try not to go too slow in general. So with the Atlanta Reign, as you can see, they kind of picked up everything that you'd expect them to. Edison's still there, they still have Gator and Hawk, but what's interesting is their support line. As we've already discussed in a previous video, Fire being gone is no surprise, and Dogman's out exploring free agency. He could potentially come back, but I don't know what the plan is with him. Iris I expected to be back, but Masa on the other hand, interesting to see him return because he really didn't have that great of a season last year. I don't know if it's just me, but he felt kind of lackluster compared to season 2. Unless they intend to trade him, it would seem they still have a lot of trust in Masa to have a bounce back year. And I'm sure some of you are going to be asking, but ATP, what about Erster? They declined his option. Well, I feel like it's kind of to be expected, don't you think? After the year he had of just not really being involved all that much with the team, you kind of expected him to probably be gone. Generally speaking, Atlanta are in a very strange spot because it seems like they're transitioning away from some of those heroes of Season 2 and they're looking to turn a new leaf. Of course they have their work cut out for them, but Atlanta, technically speaking, isn't in horrible shape because they still do have 6 players under contract, which really isn't that bad. I think if you get a solid flex DPS, because we know that Edison and Sharp aren't flex DPS players, and then maybe you potentially get another main support, you're not looking too bad. I personally would look to upgrade the tank line, but they seem to be trusting in Gator and Hawk. Now for Boston, and you won't really find any surprises maybe except for one on this tiny roster, just because Boston already kind of confirmed who was coming back the other day. They basically confirmed everybody but Jerry, but Jerry's coming back too, which is great. But the big time surprise for me is Myungbong. He decided to return to Boston. He said he wanted to give it another shot, and I respect that. I know a lot of people are going to hate that because haha, Boston jail, his career's going to die, but I love that he's committed to making this team better and he wants to show a better performance in 2021. Mad respect goes out to Myungbong. I am a huge sucker for anybody who stays loyal to their first team. As for the rest of the team though, it definitely needs work. Like, I'm really hoping that their new coach can come in, bring in a new philosophy, hopefully improve some of these guys they brought back, but also bring in some new guys that are just simply better. What's strange about this list though is there's no Axiom to be seen. I don't know if they just forgot about him or if nobody knows what his status is, but that's really weird that he's not included. I was hoping we'd know what his status is because I don't think Fusions is going to cut it. He does have the synergy with Punk and Color Hex, but I just think they probably all aren't the solution to together, you know? I think you could maybe give Punk another shot, but Fusions really isn't the answer. He hasn't been for a while now. In Color Hex, I think the same applies. A lot of people argue he has potential, but I haven't really seen it yet, so I think they definitely need to upgrade Flex DPS. And of course, let's not forget there is a gaping hole at main support because they literally don't have one right now. So I really do hope that Boston gets a big name player at this position, or at least someone who is a well-respected veteran. Next up is the Chengdu Hunters, and as usual, they are a complete mystery to all of us because we only know the confirmed status of 5 of those players from the 2020 roster. As we've already established in a previous video, Bacon Jack and A-Ting are gone. Both of them have actually retired. Then of course the most recent stuff is that for one, Leave and Molly are both going to be on the team for next year, and that Langsa's option got declined, so he is a free agent. I can't say I'm all that surprised to see both Leave and Molly make it back because they were arguably the 2 best players on this team, if not 2 of the best. I don't really know what's going to happen with like Among and everybody else though. Maybe Chengdu wants to move in a different direction and they want to pick up some talented tier 2 players. I wouldn't blame them at all if they really want to try and pursue Team CC, aka Shanghai's academy team, because there's a lot of talented pieces on that roster that could seriously upgrade them big time. The current people they could either hang on to or just completely get rid of aren't really all that appealing. The only guy I would hold on to personally is Among, but that's only because he is a fan favorite, and I think it would be really bad if you lost him. I think you'd lose a lot of your fans, and plus, he's always going to be really solid in a Wrecking Ball meta if it ever comes. Everybody else feels pretty expendable to me, so I would not be surprised in the slightest if the Chengdu Hunters undergo some major changes during this offseason. Moving on to the Dallas Fuel, this one will be pretty brief, I would say, because we already talked about what happened to them in episode 1 of this series, as they have released every single player from the team except for Doha. They really want to build around him. I don't know if they want to go full Korean or if they want to stay mixed. That's the only question I really have for them at the moment, because we know the confirmed status of everybody from 2020 already from that team. Let me know what you think Dallas is going to do down in the comment section. It is my hope that they go full Korean. I think that would be really cool, but my heart tells me that they're not going to do that and they're going to stay mixed. We'll have to see though. Now for a juicier one, the Florida Mayhem. We already know the confirmed status of Chris, Byram, Karayan, and Saya Player. They're all either gone or retired in Saya Player's case, but the interesting thing to me is the fact that both Gargoyle and BQB are free agents. It would be a shame if Florida can't bring back both of these guys, or either one of them for that matter, because they both played such a pivotal role in their 2020 campaign. Both of them were one of the best at their positions. If they lose out on either of them and also have to address the main support position still, they could be in big trouble this offseason. But who knows? Maybe these guys are expendable in their eyes and they have a plan. For all I know, they could be pursuing some big time names in the free agent market. As I said in the previous video, pay very close attention to the Mayhem this offseason. The moves they make could very well dictate whether they take that next step towards becoming potential championship contenders or just staying where they are as one of the second fiddles of the league. Next up, we have the Guangzhou Charge. Obviously, the main support position is going to be something they address because Neptuno and Chara are both gone, but their support line in general could be looking a lot different because Shu's contract has expired as well. Shu's been one of the most consistent performers on this team for the last 2 years, and it would really suck to see him go somewhere else, but it might not be up to them because he is unfortunately a free agent. He can do whatever he wants. For some other notable things that happened with the Charge, Krong is back. Thank the Lord. The Charge would have to be absolutely insane to not bring him back. Then of course the DPS line could be looking a lot different for the Charge. Eileen is back, understandably, he's a beast, but Happy and Nero could be exploring their options. I think Nero is probably gone. I could be wrong, but I think just because of the fact that he's talked about it so many times on social media that he doesn't know what his future holds, it's very uncertain, and the fact that it was probably just exhausting to go back and forth between Asia and America so much and living so far away from home. Moving to a Western team would probably make him a lot more happy, and it just makes a lot of sense. And speaking of Happy, I really don't know what he wants to do. It really does depend on the Charge, I would say. Maybe they don't want Happy back. I think that would be insane because Happy is absurdly talented and he had a very good season, but who knows? Maybe Happy doesn't want to be on Guangzhou either. Now for the Spark. I did not get to talk about them in episode 1 because they literally released information like a couple of hours after I released my initial video, so if you did not know already, Otto, Adora, Rhea, Sashin, and Bebe are all not coming back this year. When you think about it, they really didn't lose anything too significant. I think the only somewhat significant piece on that list is Bebe, but he really hasn't been all that great. He didn't develop all that much compared to Season 2, so he was expendable. Plus, I've heard a lot of good things about Coldest. I think they might want to give this guy a shot and see what he's capable of in the starting lineup full time. But there's also the chance that they're looking to sign a big name flex support. What if they brought on like Ryu Jae Hong, let's say? I could see him fitting in with this team for sure. Everything else the Spark have done so far, I like. Gushway's still there. You brought back QOQ. I think that having IDK and Mika is great because they're both solid main support options, and then Architect and Godspeed are a solid foundation at DPS. However, they cannot sit back and take it easy. I can't stress that enough because they have their work cut out for them still. They did not live up to the hype in 2020 in the slightest. Even after picking up Architect and QOQ, they simply could not figure it out. They were way too inconsistent. Their biggest accomplishments were that big win against the NYXL and also making the Countdown Cup finals, but that's all they have. Now let's talk about the Houston Outlaws, and the DPS, we kind of already knew it was happening. Linkser said that he isn't coming back to the Outlaws probably. Dante could come back, but he's also exploring his options. We know that Blase probably isn't coming back. We know that Muma's not coming back, and that Hydration is staying, but everything else we really didn't know about until this article came out. So what's interesting is the Outlaws want to start over yet again at support. Jack said we already knew was leaving based off of his social media post, and it's not too surprising to see Boink leave considering he didn't play a single second on stage this year, but Rappel also being gone is a little sad because he's kind of an underrated player. I really do hope he finds another team because in my opinion he is Overwatch League level. Then of course we have to discuss the fact that Meko is gone. Meko in Houston was a total failure. That did not work out for either parties, I would say. Meko, he really didn't play that bad. He kind of picked it up towards the end of the season, but it was by no means what we saw from him in previous years. Meko still very well could be a solid player if put into the right system. Houston was just a really bad fit, I think. So hopefully he finds a new team. Maybe he'll go back to going full Korean. I think that would work out better for him, but we will have to see. It's hard to address what I want the Outlaws to do because they have such obvious holes that we really don't need to talk about. They need a new support line. They need a new off tank. I really do hope that they get a solid main tank instead of just having Hydration there. They need a new hit scan because Linkser's gone. Probably someone who's more consistent preferably. And you definitely want to bring back Dante if you can. Now we move onward to the London Spitfire, and nothing has changed so far since that first episode of my recap that I made. We know who's leaving. We know who's staying. The guys that are on the team still, who are probably going to get traded in my opinion at some point, are Glister, Bernard, Fuse, and Sanguinar. Everybody else has been cut. Let me reiterate that I, like many other people, believe that London is going to be moving in a direction where they get more homegrown talent, if you will. They want to go more in the EU direction, maybe even get a bunch of guys from British Hurricane. That's what all of the signs are pointing to, at least. I could be wrong, but that's just what it feels like they're going to do. So, with that out of the way, now we can talk about the LA Gladiators. And honestly, I like what they've done so far. They brought back their solid DPS core of Birdring, Kevster, and Mirror. They still have Space, who is one of the best Western off-tanks you'll ever see. I'm a little sad that Shaz is gone, but I think they definitely have a plan in mind as to what they want to do with their support line. Main tank is also a big question mark, though, because maybe they want to pursue a big-time Korean main tank player like they did with Roar. It's risky because we've seen what happened with Roar, but it could also work out if they end up getting the right guy under the right system. The Glads are definitely planning some sort of blockbuster trade. I can just feel it. They're going to go all out and spend a lot of money as they usually do, so stay tuned. Now let's hop on over to the other LA team, aka the Valiant, and as we already established before, Apply, Gig, and McGravy are all already gone, but now we know that KSP, his option's been exercised, so is Shax's, which aren't really surprising at all considering how much of a dominant DPS duo they were in certain metas. KSF could come back, maybe they'll get rid of him, I'm not too sure. It's good to see Dreamer back because he was a great budget pickup and just a solid overall main tank, and Last Drone Rain coming back is another great sign as well because they were a pretty above average support line. Not the best, but definitely not the worst. The question is, though, where do the Valiant go from here? Besides KSF, whether they want to re-sign him or not, what do they want to do with some of the players they have already? Do they plan on trading any of them for budget purposes like we saw last year when they did it with Space and just about everybody else when they were cleaning house? Or do they have something else in mind? The Valiant are a weird team. After last year, you really don't know what they're going to do. And after what we learned from last year, if you're a Valiant fan, you should probably prepare for the worst just in case. Alright, it's New York Excelsior time, and this is one of the most interesting teams of this period of time in my opinion because they have to make a decision. Do they want to rebuild and start over, or do they want to give this core a shot one more time? All of their main players that you think of, like Libero, Sabiobi, Mono, Jonak, Animo, they all have a team option that they either need to pick up or decline. So I don't know what the NYXL plan to do. If I were them, I'd probably try and hold on to at least a few of them, but who knows what they have in store. In the meantime, while we find out what happens with those guys, we know for a fact that Hoxel is gone because he retired from Pro Overwatch for the time being. Nene is gone, Who Are You is gone, Bianca is gone, which is really sad to me because I thought he had a lot of potential. If he was well groomed enough, then he could have turned turned into something on the NYXL, I believe, and Hoppa is gone, and that's not much of a shocker considering the fact they had a pretty down year compared to Season 2. So let's say that Mono, Jonak, Animo, and Sabiobi and Libero are all back. What do they want to do? Who are they going to get at their off-tank position? They're hitting the reset button on that position for the second year in a row. Do they maybe want to give Meko another chance? Do they have somebody else in mind? I'm very curious. No matter what happens, this NYXL team is shaping to potentially look a lot different compared to previous years. So if you're an NYXL fan, prepare for the worst potentially. Transitioning over to the Paris Eternal, all of the suspects that you would expect to come back are indeed back. Exy and Sparkle are still here, Hanbin's here, and FD God. All superstars in their own right. Everything else with Paris is pretty up in the air though. With the exception of FD God, all of their Frenchmen have uncertain futures. Nico, Soon, and Ben Best all could potentially have their contracts be declined for the next year. Unless Paris intends to go more towards the Korean side of things with their roster, I kind of hope at the very least they bring back Ben Best and Soon. Ben Best had a comeback year. He was absolutely amazing in Season 3. I think it's great to just hold on to him because he could perform in big time games. He's already proven that. If not, you can have him come off the bench in certain metas, and he's just a great veteran to have. And the same applies with Soon, except there was no comeback year for him. He was solid as he usually is. In terms of some other news, both NoSmite and Smex both aren't coming back. Neither of them are super surprising. NoSmite was basically just a specialist, and then Smex, he was a bench rider. He was sick for a lot of this year, and they have Hanbin anyway. But the sad thing here is, of course, Fielder. Not only has his contract expired, but Paris has already officially announced they are not bringing him back. Honestly, I can hardly believe it because he was such a solid mid-season pickup. Like, the moment he was able to play a game for that team, he was an elite level flex support while playing on high ping, mind you. So to see him not get picked up for another year, that's just unbelievably sad, and it makes you wonder what Paris are going to do at flex support now because they need one. Next up is the Philly Fusion, and they have some negotiating to do. They're going to be very busy this offseason because Fury, his contract is done. The original one from the London Spitfire, I believe, it is officially over, and he has the right to explore free agency and sign somewhere else, and that would be a big time loss for Philly in more ways than one. I think it is critical they bring him back, not just for his amazing skills as one of the best off-tank players in the world, but also because of the fact that him and Carpe are close friends, and I think if you don't re-sign him, Carpe is going to be very mad at you. Another big piece that could potentially be on his way out from Philly is Ivy, because his original rookie contract from Toronto is done. Remember that Philly traded for him. They didn't pick him up in free agency, I believe. They traded for him, so that original contract was still intact. He was such a pivotal part of that DPS rotation all season long. He was a great flex player for them. He played all sorts of different things at a very high level, like Hanzo and May, but maybe Philly can't offer enough money to both him and Fury, and they have to make a decision on who they want, you know? They can't pick both of them, and I think Ivy's probably going to want a massive payday after showing he is a beast on Philly this year. Another interesting fact about Philly's offseason right now is that they might end up only having one player left from their OG Season 1 roster, and that is, of course, Carpe, who did sign a contract extension a while back, so he's going to be there for the time being. He's not going anywhere. He's locked up for a couple of years, I believe, still, but Poco and Sato have exercises that could end up being declined, and Boombox, he's gone, he's not coming back. If Philly lost both Fury and Poco in the same season, that would be pretty brutal. They're both good off-tank players. Of course, Fury's way better, but Poco was good in his own right, and Sato also had a comeback year. I don't think I need to tell any of you that. He was one of the better main tanks in the Overwatch League, but maybe Philly are just done with him, and they actually want to try and pursue someone new, like we thought they would a couple of years ago. If you want some good news, though, if you're a Philly fan, Jesus back, which is awesome. He played very well. He showed a lot of promise as a rookie, and then both Funny Astro and Alarm are still there, so you have your solid support line still intact. Now let's talk about the reigning champions, the two-time reigning champions, San Francisco Shock. And unsurprisingly, they tried to bring back as many people as humanly possible because they have superstars across the board. But even so, there still are a lot of superstars they could be losing out on. For one, Rascal's contract has expired. 2, Super's contract has expired. 3, Moth's contract has expired. And 4, Violet's contract has also expired. Anybody I did not just name there is safe, and they're on the team for 2021. But let's talk about this. Losing out on Rascal could really suck. I know there was a lot of double hit scan this year, but when it's all said and done, Rascal's a flex god, and for those situations where you don't just need double hit scan, you need other things, you love to have him there, but Rascal's probably, for one, going to want a payday, which the Shock might not be able to afford, but 2, he might just want to leave anyway because of the lack of playtime he got this year, despite being a superstar. How about Super now? He's a very interesting case because a lot of people would argue he's not the biggest loss in the world because Smurf is just more versatile. There's more metas where he's going to be better, like with Orisa and Winston, let's say. But Super's Ryan is still one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. He proved to have a pretty good Roadhog as well during the playoffs, and he just has that personality, you know? I feel like the Shock just aren't the Shock without Super. But the big part of this list is, of course, both Violet and Moth, because that's an entire support line right there gone. The best support line in the league for the last 2 years could just be gone in an instant. I'm not really sure what Moth and Violet want to do. I'm sure they definitely are interested in staying, but I mean, they're both going to want big-time paydays as well. When you're the best support line in the league for multiple years in a row, you're going to want to seek out offers where you can get paid big time because you deserve it. Let's say we're in a situation where the Shock can only bring back one of these two guys. Well, if you ask me, you bring back Moth, because for one, main supports I feel like are a lot harder to come by than flex support players, but two, you still do have Twilight on the roster. And while Twilight's ceiling might not necessarily be as high as Violet's, because he arguably is like the highest ceiling out of any player in the league in general, Twilight is still no joke. He's one of the best support players in the world still. I don't know what's going to happen with the Shock this offseason, but I do not see them bringing back all of those guys I just talked about. It just doesn't seem possible given how many of them are going to want a serious payday. How about the losing Grand Finals team, aka the Seoul Dynasty? They're in a pretty tough spot as well. It's good that they brought back Prophet. Gesture's an interesting thing. I mean, he played well towards the end of the year, so I guess it's okay to bring him back and give him another chance. Creative coming back is great too. He has a lot of potential, but then there's a lot of just expired and declined contracts all over the place. Given how little Illicit has played, I expect him to be gone, but Fitz could come back. I'm hoping that they do accept his option after the way he played this year. Marvel coming back potentially would be good too. I know that he wasn't that great off of Sigma, but he did used to be a pretty good main tank, so I think just holding on to him would be good. Michelle leaving, I think, is probably going to happen. Tuyu not coming back is a little sad because he could have had potential as well, but Dosha not coming back, not too surprising. They definitely do believe in creative. Slime going, a little sad because Toby is also gone, so now the Seoul Dynasty are left with no main supports potentially. That would be a real mess. Like if Toby this time is gone for good, oh man, that's brutal, especially this year because Toby had a breakout season. In my opinion, this was his best campaign in the Overwatch League yet, and it really wasn't all that close. He was really, really good on everything he played, so losing him is so tragic, and then to not have Slime as a backup either, that's a lot worse. Soul's under new management though, so hopefully they can kind of turn this around and they have an idea of what their future is, because right now it looks kind of bleak, I'll be honest. Not having a main support and just not having a real sense of direction besides like building around Prophet and Creative and Gesture kind of worries me. Next up is the Shanghai Dragons, and while there's a lot of expiring contracts on that team, you're probably really happy if you're a Dragons fan just because the core that really helped you win a lot of games to begin with last year is all still there. Fleta, he's under contract. Lip, under contract. Void, under contract. Fearless, under contract. Lee Jae-gun, under contract. And then Izuyaki's option was exercised, so he is also under contract for the next year. All of the people that Shanghai could be losing are basically just extra fluff, if you will. Like Luffy, if he's gone, doesn't really matter. He was only really useful in a double flex support meta anyway. If you lose it on Gegri, it kind of sucks because she's kind of like the heart and soul of this team. Everybody loves her, but in reality, she's really all not that useful because you have Void. What's the point of even having her? She's kind of just wasting a contract that you could be spending on other potential pieces. Then with the DPS, Dia, I mean, he never even played anyway. He was on a two-way contract. He was busy popping off in contenders. Ding, he didn't really play either, and everything that he's good at is kind of filled out by Fleta and Lip as well, like his Sombra and his Pharah. They both cover that. The only potential big loss is Diem because he proved he's still really nasty in the playoffs this year, but he probably wants to go play somewhere else considering he really didn't get all that much playtime. Shanghai's sitting in a pretty good spot, I would say. Arguably the best out of any Overwatch League team out there simply because they have their entire core intact still, plus stand one if that matters to any of you coming off the bench. Now all they really have to do is just bolster that core a little bit. Maybe get another DPS player to complement Fleta and Lip. Maybe get another tank player because why not, just to give Void a rest every once in a while. And maybe they get another flex support to replace Luffy, like Ryu Jae-hong, let's say, so they can do a double flex support meta if they need to. Next up is the Toronto Defiant, and they were very quiet this offseason until recently with this little article and their Twitter suddenly blowing up when we find out they are completely dismantling this team, kind of like with Dallas, for example, and the London Spitfire. They're just starting over completely. everybody on this list either had their option declined or their contract is expiring. And they already said their official goodbyes to everybody you see on this list except for Logix. He's the only one that could potentially still re-sign with the team. Everybody else is gone. So much for building a super likable and marketable team that also appeals to your Canadian audience. That's just done. They're tired of losing. They want to win now. I don't know what measures they plan to take to become winners, but I'm very curious to find out. That much is for sure. Maybe they want to go full Korean, or perhaps they have something else in mind. Maybe they just want to get a bunch of big name free agents again like they did last year, or maybe they're going to go the contenders route like with the Vancouver Titans. Like with Dallas, Toronto is going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this offseason for sure. As for the players they all ditched, well, most of them I kind of feel like probably won't find a new home at the Overwatch League level. I think Kareev might be a shoo-in to make it to a new team because he's still a really solid flex support player regardless of Toronto's result. Maybe like Roki or Cruz, I guess, could find a new team. Cruz in particular is very vocal. I know that both Paris and Toronto liked him a lot despite him moving away from both of them, but everybody else, I mean, it's pretty up in the air. Looking at the other Canadian team, aka the Vancouver Titans, we kind of already talked about them a lot in the previous episode. We discussed how Suna's gone, we discussed how Karkar's gone, and that KSA is gone as well, and that they exercised the options of Shredlock, Rolf, and Dalton. But what sucks if you're a Vancouver fan is the fact that Shockwave may not be coming back. He was literally one of the only bright spots on the Vancouver Titans all season long, and now he may not be returning. He could very well re-sign with the Titans, but if I was him, I would probably get out of there because his services could end up being beneficial for a different team. I'm sure some teams have him on their radar because he played well this year. He's not a top tier hit scan or anything. He's not life changing, but he could be part of like a decent rotation. The Titans are in such a weird state, and I really don't know what to expect. I feel like they want to keep on building through tier 2 talent like they said they were going to after they broke up with the runaway players, but who knows? Maybe they'll bring in some veterans as well. And last, but certainly not least, is the Washington Justice, and currently things are looking pretty messy for them, as the only people currently under contract still are Tuba and Roar. Tuba's great to see back because after the initial struggles of the Justice at the beginning of the season, he really started to pick it up. Even when they were still losing, he looked a lot better, like in the Genji meta and onwards, I would say. He was a very solid and reliable flex DPS option. As for Roar, I'm not exactly sure why he is still under contract. He was arguably one of the worst main tanks in the Overwatch League for sure, one of the bottom tier players at that position, but I get the feeling he might transition into a coaching role potentially, simply because I did hear a lot of rumors that he was a pivotal part of their coaching success during the playoff run. Regardless of whether or not he becomes a coach or stays as a player, the Justice need to address that main tank position big time. They gotta sign someone who's going to carry them there and not hold them back anymore. But there's a lot of other positions where the same can be said, obviously. Now, of course, there's the big elephant in the room, aka Decay, who is a free agent right now, and I'm pretty sure most of us knew this was going to happen because that was the type of contract he signed with the Justice. It was one where it was not able to extend because of the timing in which he was signed to the team. It was an emergency thing. And that really sucks if you're the Justice because you were finding so much success with him, you were almost making a push towards the Final Four and maybe even the Grand Finals. You got very close, you were having a lot of fun together, building up that synergy, but now that could all be thrown away potentially simply because Decay can go wherever he chooses. I mean, it goes without saying that a majority of the league is probably going to be interested in this guy because he's a monster. He's an S-tier hit scan player. Who wouldn't want to get a shot at him? Hopefully the amazing Justice coaching is enough to bring him back. If not, the Justice are going to have to try and build around Tuba, I guess, moving forward. It's looking like the Justice want to stay full Korean, but I don't know what they're going to do at off tank or DPS because both Decay and Stitch are free agents. AIM got an Archer gone, so they need a new support line. The Justice are going to look extremely different because I don't think they want to bring any of these guys back probably except for Decay. I suppose Stitch could come back as well, but they might not want him because he only really played well during that playoff run on the Ashe. It was only the Ashe too, so he might not be worth picking up. I know a lot of people are going to say, but what about Janu? He's so good. Well, to be honest, he's not what he used to be. In Season 2, he was a god. He was one of the best off tanks I've ever seen in my life, but this year it was kind of just like, meh. His D.Va was still pretty good, not as good as it used to be. His Sigma still needs a lot of work. I think that's a big turnoff because Sigma's been such a pivotal part of the meta. His Zarya's just okay. His Hog's pretty good as well, but I don't know what's going to happen with Hog moving forward. Janu just feels like he might not be the right fit. And I mean, they declined his option, so clearly it's a you served your purpose type of deal. They needed an off-tank mid-season because they decided to transition to full Korean, and they got Janu for that, and now he's gone. They don't need him. He's done. Whether Decay is part of this team's future or not, I really am hoping that Justice just build a solid team that isn't going to let their fans down and have a really bad regular season yet again. If they have a third bad regular season in a row, then that's going to be a big yikes. One other thing before we wrap up, I forgot to mention this in the Philly section of the video. It's that the Philadelphia Fusion have parted ways with their head coach KDG, and that is a shocker to me and to a lot of people out there. He genuinely was one of the best coaches this year, and I can't really wrap my head around why him and Philly parted ways. Was it a mutual thing? Did Philly just not want him anymore because they were mad at him for not winning any of the major games, like the couple of regular season finals they were in, or losing both games they were in the Final Four? I don't know what the deal is with that. But I mean, Philly still had such a good year. This was their best year by far. Easily their most consistent as well, and I mean, they had the second best regular season record in the league, only behind the Shanghai Dragons. Even if you want to factor in all of their losses from the regular season tournaments and with the Final Four, their loss total on the year only goes up to 7. That's it. They lost 7 times this entire year. If this was not a mutual thing and it was just Philly not wanting to bring him back, I really am questioning why this happened. I guess maybe some internal issues, or they just don't like the direction he was taking. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. I don't like the fact that he's gone. The good news, though, is a bunch of other teams who need a coach could pick him up now. That would be great because he has experience coaching full Korean teams and mixed teams. While he probably finds a new team relatively soon, the Fusion now have a hole at the coaching role and some other potential roles on the roster, as I already mentioned before. This offseason keeps getting more and more wild by the minute, and this is just the beginning because just wait until free agency starts. It's going to get even more insane. And when that period does begin later this week, I got you covered. So that's going to do it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you did enjoy it. Make sure to give it a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, if you want to keep up on all things Overwatch League news related. And let me know what you think of all of these contract situations down in the comment section. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP signing out. Peace.